When I went off to war and came back, I looked up at that red butte and said, I'm home. I don't like to fight, but I will if I think I'm right. When it comes to the land that has given so much to me, I will fight with everything I've got. I've spent most of my life trying to make sure our public lands are well managed, and that our special lands are conserved for the next generation. I believe we need wild lands. We need them for places to retreat and to heal, but we also need them to feed our imagination and our spirit. I was a school teacher at the time that they discovered uranium out somewhere in the hills, and it was rather ironic. I think my salary was about $200 a month. You know, you're always looking for another way to make money. Boy, within 6 months, we were out there staking claims like crazy. You know, we were going to make some money. The bad part was that in order to prove up on these claims, the only way to show that with uranium when it was cleared down underground was to take a bulldozer and dig a big hole. So wherever your claims were, you just had these bulldozers come in and dig that big hole, and it was just a big open gash on the earth. That is one of the phases of my life that I regret. There were thousands of these claims, of course, all over the gas hills and out into the Green River Basin. The claims that we had were good enough, were rich enough, that we were able to sell them. And so over a period of 2 or 3 years that we were involved in them, I was able to make probably somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. And that was the money that started High Country News.
In 1969, Tom Bell took the paper over, and it was called Camping News Weekly. Where are the good spots to hunt? Where are the good spots to fish? There were even ads in here. But then Tom decided to put more and more environmental news in it because that was his interest. So he produced the very first issue of High Country News, published January 30th, 1970.
Well, I didn't make any bones about the fact that High Country News was to be an environmental newspaper. And you'll notice if you read my columns, that was my bully pulpit, or I just pour out my heart. I had several good friends in Idaho, Colorado, and Montana, and so they would feed me material. A lot of it is reprinted from these other folks for a pretty long stretch when we were really short of money. I was the only one who was the writer. It was my money going into it, and I wasn't getting anything back. And that's when I put out the call and said, we've come to the end, and that was it. Kind of a sad day when I had to write that letter. I had no idea that I would get the response that I did. It just blew me away. All these people respond, and they say, we can't let High Country News die, because it's the only place that I can read about these things that mean so much to me. Within a matter of hours, we had some money, and within a matter of days, we had quite a little money, and within a period of weeks, something in the order of 25,000, 30,000, but it was enough to put High Country News on solid footing again. The thing that I think really sets High Country News apart from so many other newspapers was all the readers, but there weren't all that many of the all. There weren't enough of them to really keep it going, and so in order to keep it going, they just sent money, and they still are. The Friends of High Country News. When that money came in, I saw there was a chance to add to the staff. So I asked Bruce, and he said, well, I have this girlfriend who is a really good writer. So they both came, and they just fell right in with it, and they really liked it. So I just announced to them, here's the paper. You want to take it? And informed people is a more intelligent people. And that was the whole point of High Country News. Somebody has to keep people on their toes and aware of what's going on out there in the world.
High Country News came open. The staff was leaving en masse. staff of 3.
They were in Lander, Wyoming, and we said we would take it over. It's a nonprofit if you moved it to Paonia.
We'd already established ourselves as ex-New Yorkers in this very small town, and we've come to like this place. It's unique and weird.
This was 1983, and then we, as a husband-wife team or a wife-husband team, ran it for 19 years.
Ed was a physicist, an academic, and I met him at our college newspaper. I was a cub, and he was my trainer. Ed really was a born writer and shouldn't have been a physicist. Think of those years.
I wasted 12 years of my life being a physicist.
Yeah, I mean, he's a terrific writer and thinker. You know, I always said he was the heart of High Country News, the intellectual leader. I got the paper out.
You just tell, looking at us, I'm the professorial guy, and she made the paper beat.
Oh, well, not exactly, because Ed read every issue we did. So I think you're overestimating my role and underestimating yours. I know you are. Anyway, we were a good team.
We were a good team.
Yeah.
The big story that we covered in that period was the near destruction of Glen Canyon Dam by the floods of 1983. And if it had gone, Hoover Dam would have gone. It would have destroyed the West as we know it. If we did anything in those 19 years, it was to explain the positive side of public land ranching to an environmental audience.
As we've seen with the oil and gas boom here, who stands up to that? People on the land, and they're liable to be ranchers, and environmental groups need allies. When High Country News turned 20, we were discovered.
We were in Rolling Stone and the New York Times and Newsweek and Harrowsmith.
Christian Science Monitor. This was always the routine. Small paper in the West has big clout. It was just gifts from God. Got all these subscribers. If I did anything good, it was understand the value of interns. All these young people, I've worked with over 100. They're out seeding the West, doing great work in all kinds of ways.
Being an intern for High Country News basically gave me my first practical experience as a journalist. You have assignments right away, and you get to go out in the field and actually shoot the pictures, write the story, get your hands dirty. High Country News really helped launch me into the journalism world and created the platform for the rest of my career.
My experience at High Country News was really the place where my writing took off. I learned the value of being able to analyze critical information, of really being able to listen to all the parties involved and also constructively engage around emotions, because that's certainly a big part of conflict, whether it's environmental or otherwise. And those skills have really helped me to become an effective mediator for the city of Boulder.
I do a lot of coverage of water politics, and that's becoming a huge issue across the West right now. With population growth, big droughts on the Colorado River especially, people are starting to come to grips with climate change and what it means for the future. God, you look at the list: water supply for cities, water for farming, recreation, water for skiing, for fishing, for kayaking, for power generation, for electricity for the whole region, for mining, oil shale development. Water really is what ties all of this together. There's no other publication out there that takes the entire West as its beat. Nobody else has the resources and the commitment like High Country News does to really dig deep into these issues and explain what's really happening. That's becoming even more important with the demise of a lot of the local daily newspapers in the West. And with water especially, it's incredibly complicated, it's incredibly important, it's something that ties everything in the West together.
In 1984, all the lobbyists in DC were reading this little black and white newspaper called High Country News. And I was like, what's this? And they're like, well, this is how we actually stay in touch with what's happening in the West, Paul. And so I started reading High Country News. It said, we're desperate for interns in the classifieds of High Country News. And I said, well, I can be a desperate intern. High Country News is not a party line publication. We are interested in getting to the bottom of issues. And that means we talk to everybody. We talk to the ranchers and the miners. We talk to the environmentalists. We talk to the biologists. We talk to the people in the local community whose lives are at stake and whose economy is at stake. And then we put it all together and we let the readers decide, hey, what do you think of this issue? It's complex. There's no simple answer. There's no simple answer to any of these things, but here are the facts. And you can be a more informed citizen because of it. We cover now 1 million square miles of the West, from the Canadian border to the Mexican border, and from California all the way to the Great Plains. We consider this whole western part related, and indeed, we're connected. The water in the Colorado River itself flows all the way down to California and the Gulf of Mexico. There are public lands in all of these states, so there are commonalities about what constitutes the West. People are touched by how we approach issues, and that has opened up their hearts to us and kept us going.
One of the things that High Country News tries to do is smash stereotypes, because usually they're not correct. For example, we think of the West as being purely Republican, purely conservative, and yet what that ignores is the fact that a lot of these mining communities, which a lot of these communities were for a long time, were heavily Democratic because of the unions. And ranchers are maybe some of the best stewards of the land. By profession, they are environmentalists. We've even had stories about oil industry executives who are now fighting against wind turbines because they're wrecking the environment. So, you know, one of the things about the West is that it's much more complicated than people think.
I don't think you can put down an issue saying, oh, that was simple. I know what the clear, obvious, direct, simple position is on that one. It's really, you put it down and scratch your head and think, I better keep thinking about that.
High Country News was a tabloid for about 30 years. It really doesn't print very well, and it's such a drag because we always have had great photos, and it just is a travesty to have a great photo turned to mush on newsprint like this. I came to High Country News in 1990. Actually, we used the darkroom down the street at the local newspaper and did black and white photos and processed our own film, and had this big old machine where you would shoot the photos and make them into images that had dots that can print. In the early 2000s, we started thinking we might have a better newsstand presence if we were more like a magazine. First, we went to this slightly smaller size with just a nicer cover stock, but then we were still newsprint inside. And then a year and a half or so later, we went to color inside, and then we shrunk down even more and are really magazine-y now. And it just prints great. I design the pages on the computer and print out pages like this for everyone to come and look at. We put one more set of corrections on and upload it to the printer in Denver. They print it, and yeah, then the whole thing comes together every 2 weeks. So the paper has literally unfolded over the last 40 years. It really is an amazing transition.
Our circulation is about 23,000 paid circulation, which means that maybe 60,000 people actually read the print magazine, and we get something like 70,000 visitors to our website every month. So a lot of people see the work that we put out, and we hope that that has some kind of influence over the way people see the West, because that's going to change the way the West is.
High Country News is a critical piece of the West. The in-depth reporting and the variety of stories and the places that it covers just aren't covered in any other form of media. It looks into little corners of the West. It gives us all a perspective that we just can't get anywhere else. I just love High Country News. It's been a part of my life really since almost the beginning of the paper. And it's just been an important part of my living out my life in the West.
High Country just has a way of being both particular and general, because it takes you to individual creeks and forests and ranches and towns and wild places. And it also gives you the big picture. You follow High Country and you're following the West, and you're learning about it and where it's going and where it ought to go. And it's been just a central part of what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 decades.
I've been on the board of High Country News for 24 years, and I'm just as big a fan of the paper now as when I first started reading it in the mid-70s. We cover just such a diverse range of social, environmental, and land use issues, and we do it in a way that no one else does, in depth and in an unbiased manner.
High Country News is the glue that holds a 1 million square mile region together, and of that 1 million square mile region, 500,000 square miles of it belongs collectively to all Americans, and it has some of the most precious real estate on earth. And so an investment in High Country News has enormous leverage.
Back in the 1980s, we thought, we'll never get to 10,000 readers. Well, we did get to 10,000 readers. And then in the 90s, we thought, we're never going to get to 20,000 readers. Then we hit 20,000 readers. And now we're pushing up against 25,000 readers. And as the region grows and more people find out about high country, I see no reason why we won't double that number in the future. We're going to be vibrant in both print and online for a long time.
You know, I think the good Lord just had his hand on high country news from the start. And the guiding that goes on yet, whether you believe or not, why, I do.